The message arrived just as Rowan Mercer was buttoning a borrowed shirt that still smelled faintly of his older brother's cologne. His phone lit up with a cheerful notification reminding him that someone named Claire would be waiting at a small daytime café across town, expecting to meet the man she had spent 2 weeks talking to. Rowan stared at the screen, then at the hospital bracelet wrapped around his brother's wrist. One unexpected illness had left his brother too weak to stand, yet too embarrassed to cancel a date he believed might finally change his lonely life. Rowan made a desperate promise that seemed harmless in the moment. He would simply explain everything, apologize, and leave after a few minutes. But the instant he walked into the café, his heart nearly stopped. The woman standing to greet him wasn't just the blind date. She was his new boss, the woman who had interviewed him only 3 days earlier and whose approval determined whether he could keep the job that meant everything to his struggling family. Before we begin this emotional journey, if you believe kindness can change lives, forgiveness is stronger than pride, hope is worth holding on to, and everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community. Rowan had spent most of his life feeling like the backup plan. His older brother, Graham, had always been the confident one, the person who could make strangers laugh within minutes and turn every awkward conversation into an unforgettable memory. Rowan, on the other hand, preferred silence, careful planning, and keeping his head down. When their parents passed away within 2 difficult years of each other, Graham had sacrificed promotions and opportunities to help raise his younger brother until Rowan could finish school. That sacrifice left Graham with a modest apartment, endless overtime shifts, and very little time to build a life of his own. Rowan never forgot it. When Graham finally admitted that he had met someone through a dating app who seemed thoughtful, intelligent, and kind, Rowan had smiled wider than he had in months. He watched his brother iron his shirt twice, practice introductions in the hallway mirror, and laugh at himself for being nervous like a teenager. Then, only hours before the date, everything collapsed. A sudden medical emergency landed Graham in the hospital with severe complications from an infection that doctors assured them was treatable but required immediate care. Graham looked devastated, not because of the illness itself but because he believed disappearing without explanation would make him seem dishonest. As Graham drifted in and out of sleep after treatment, he asked Rowan to send an apology. Rowan picked up the phone, read through weeks of cheerful messages between Graham and Claire, and saw genuine excitement growing with every conversation. Something inside him refused to let such hope disappear without at least offering an explanation in person. He convinced himself he would simply arrive, tell the truth immediately, apologize sincerely, and wish her well. That simple plan lasted exactly 5 seconds. Claire Whitmore stood as Rowan entered the café, wearing the same calm expression she had carried during his job interview earlier that week. She managed one of the city's most respected architectural firms, and Rowan had been hired on probation after months of unemployment. She recognized him instantly. Surprise flashed across her face, followed almost immediately by disappointment that cut deeper than anger ever could. Rowan felt every carefully rehearsed sentence disappear. His heartbeat echoed so loudly that he barely heard the soft music playing around them. He realized how impossible the situation looked. To Claire, it appeared that a new employee had created a fake online identity to deceive his own employer into a romantic meeting. Before she could leave, Rowan spoke faster than he had ever spoken in his life. Every detail spilled out with painful honesty. He explained Graham's illness, the hospital, the foolish decision to appear in person instead of sending another message, and the promise he had made to his brother. He admitted it had been a terrible idea. He admitted he understood if she never believed him. He admitted he would accept whatever happened at work because he deserved the consequences. Claire listened without interrupting. She wasn't convinced immediately. She had built her career by recognizing manipulation before it damaged projects or people. Trust had never come easily after a previous business partner had lied repeatedly while hiding financial problems that nearly destroyed the company. Rowan's story sounded unbelievable, almost absurd. Then Rowan quietly placed his brother's hospital visitor badge on the table beside the untouched coffee he had ordered. He didn't do it to prove himself. He simply realized he had nothing left except the truth. Claire looked at the badge, then at the exhaustion beneath Rowan's eyes. His sleeves were slightly too long because he was wearing his brother's shirt. His shoes didn't quite match his belt. Tiny details that seemed insignificant suddenly fit together into a picture no liar would have carefully invented. Instead of anger, Claire felt something unexpected. Compassion. She suggested they walk outside into the afternoon sunshine instead of remaining inside the crowded café where curious strangers had begun glancing toward them. As they walked through a nearby park, Rowan told her about growing up with Graham. He spoke about scraped knees, cheap birthday cakes, second-hand bicycles, and the brother who skipped vacations for nearly 10 years so Rowan could attend college without crushing debt. Every sentence carried gratitude instead of self-pity. Claire found herself talking too. She admitted she hadn't actually wanted to try online dating. Her friends had convinced her after years of working endless hours while ignoring every possibility of personal happiness. She confessed that she almost cancelled the meeting because trusting strangers had become increasingly difficult. Neither of them laughed much that afternoon. Instead, they discovered something rarer than easy chemistry. They found understanding. Before they parted, Claire surprised Rowan by asking about Graham's condition. Rowan answered honestly, thanked her for listening, and apologized one final time. The following Monday felt even more uncomfortable than the date. Rowan expected termination. Instead, Claire called him into her office. She explained that personal mistakes and professional performance were different things. The weekend had been confusing, awkward, and emotionally exhausting, but she believed integrity was revealed not when life was easy but when someone chose honesty despite knowing it might cost everything. Then she handed him his first major assignment. It wasn't favoritism. It was trust. Rowan worked harder than he ever had before. He arrived early every morning and stayed focused throughout every afternoon. While Graham slowly recovered, Rowan balanced hospital visits with demanding deadlines, refusing to let either responsibility suffer. His co-workers noticed his quiet determination long before they learned anything about the unusual blind date. Months passed. One afternoon, Graham finally returned home healthy enough to laugh about the entire disaster. When Rowan confessed that Claire had actually become his boss before becoming the woman from the café, Graham laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. Yet his laughter eventually faded into tears. He realized his younger brother had risked everything simply because he didn't want someone kind to believe she had been abandoned without explanation. Claire continued observing Rowan from a professional distance. She saw how he treated receptionists with the same respect he showed executives. She saw him volunteer to help overwhelmed coworkers without expecting recognition. She saw him admit mistakes before anyone discovered them. Those quiet choices mattered more than polished speeches. One sunny afternoon, nearly 6 months after the unforgettable cafe meeting, the company organized a charity event renovating a community center for families facing hardship. Rowan spent hours painting walls alongside interns, executives, and local volunteers. Claire watched children run through freshly restored rooms, laughing with the kind of carefree joy adults often forget. For the first time since they met, she realized she wasn't thinking about the awkward blind date anymore. She was thinking about Rowan. Not because of one dramatic moment. Because of hundreds of ordinary moments filled with honesty. Later that afternoon, Graham unexpectedly arrived carrying homemade sandwiches for the volunteers. He finally met Claire face to face. Instead of awkwardness, there was gratitude. He apologized sincerely for the impossible situation. Claire smiled and admitted it had become one of the strangest stories she had ever lived through. Graham quietly thanked her for giving Rowan a chance when walking away would have been easier. Claire answered with something Rowan would remember forever. She said that kindness often arrives wearing the disguise of inconvenience, and people who recognize it are usually rewarded in ways they never expect. Over the following year, Rowan earned a permanent position through dedication alone. Claire and Rowan slowly built a friendship that rested on honesty instead of perfect first impressions. There were no dramatic declarations, no impossible coincidences, and no magical shortcuts. There were ordinary lunches during workdays, conversations after volunteer events, shared laughter over Graham's endless teasing, and growing trust that neither of them rushed. Eventually, friendship became love. Not because fate had trapped two strangers inside an unbelievable coincidence. Because they had both chosen truth when lies would have been easier. Years later, Rowan often thought back to that terrifying afternoon outside the café. If he had invented excuses, Claire would have walked away forever. If Claire had judged him without listening, she would have missed the man standing behind an impossible misunderstanding. If Graham had never sacrificed so much for his younger brother, Rowan would never have learned that real love is measured through quiet acts of selflessness rather than grand speeches. Life had not rewarded perfection. It had rewarded courage. Before we reach the end of this story, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a misunderstanding that eventually became one of the greatest blessings in your life? Please leave a meaningful comment sharing the lesson you learned, because your story may encourage someone who feels hopeless today. When Rowan and Claire eventually stood together at another daytime cafe, years after the moment that almost pushed them apart forever, they smiled at the memory that had once filled them with embarrassment. The same sunlight poured through the windows. The same gentle breeze carried laughter from people passing outside. Only one thing had truly changed. Two strangers who nearly walked away had discovered that honesty could survive awkward beginnings, forgiveness could heal uncomfortable mistakes, and hope could quietly transform ordinary lives into extraordinary ones. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that the most beautiful chapters of life rarely begin perfectly. Sometimes they begin with fear, misunderstanding, and impossible circumstances, but they grow into something unforgettable because someone chooses kindness over judgment, truth over comfort, and hope over giving up.